pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You'll see there is an agenda tonight, and tonight is the main topic is the review of the admin and other, which includes about 8 tabs in the book. And then at the end we'll do other business, and there's some new other business that we want to talk about. There's been a suggestion that this be videoed, and we just heard about that today, and so we ought to talk about that some. I guess since we have the one topic, if there's any public, I see some public back there, if there's any public input, now would be a good time. No problem. We had you have the subcommittee minutes there. I think they're terrifically written. I wrote them. But no, I didn't even follow my recommended format, other than the fact that, you know, we looked at 8 tabs, a lot of things, so this seemed like a reasonable approach. And what I think we ought to do, because it's always a concern that, you know, if you're not on a subcommittee, sometimes you feel people may not review the budget. So what we ought to do is leaf through these tabs so that any of you have any questions about our discussion with Scott and Jeff, you can bring them up. But in reality, when you look at the value of the budget of the 8 tabs, which the tabs includes elected officials, boards and commissions, admin, finance, appraisal, technology, legal, insurance, welfare, and debt. Basically all other than the normal departments when we think about it. The selectmen's budget is a 0.9% reduction from last year. As the subcommittee went through, there were 2 issues raised regarding the dollars. One was on the elected officials' stipends, and we'll talk about that. And the subcommittee voted 3-1 to reduce that by 50%. And that is reflected in our recommendation. The other one was whether the town should be a member of the New Hampshire Municipal Association. And the subcommittee was split on that, so we didn't do anything as far as impact of the budget. But I thought I had some input here and there are other input that might be interesting, but I thought the first thing we ought to do is look to the tab elected officials, which is the first one we talked about, first red tab. And what caused the discussion in the subcommittee that led to the 3-1 vote was that, you know, the treasurer and the moderator and the supervisors of the checklist, you know, are making some money in tough times, and so it was the general feeling of the committee that that be cut in half. And I would, you know, I would think this whole committee will react to that, and we can either do it now or just go through the total budget. That was the only comment we made on here. The next item is boards and commissions. No, town administrator. And there's 2 people as far as head count goes in the administration office. If you look down through here, you know, in general, it's a reasonable budget. There was a discussion in this area since the administration as to why year after year in what has been a continuing downturn of the economy that everybody gets a pay raise. And if you look at the data we have, there's $46,040 of scheduled money for merit raises, plus the you know, Social Security and so forth that goes with that. And the general answer and discussion went that the selectmen, you know, weighed this over very diligently and didn't want to see non-union employees not get a raise when union employees did, and the union contracts have a raise on it. So that was the only discussion. There was no movement on the subcommittee to do anything about that. You guys can chip in anytime you want.
Is that an offer?
That's an offer, and I just want to reflect what we talked about.
Well, the other thing that came up that we were a little surprised at was on the retirement, and we did not realize at the time that the town administrator receives 2 retirement payments, one into the state level, and also there's a town contribution to a 401k that was done as part of his contract. And I guess, Mr. Selectman, if you could let us know why that was done, because that's not something that has been done in the past, and this is brand new.
Yeah, the issue with his retirement was that Mr. Dunn, in negotiating with the contract, asked if the town would do a matching contribution to his retirement plan. Am I correct in saying that, Mr. Dunn? And so that's not a guarantee. That's only if he's willing to kick into that. We'll kick in up to 5%.
I guess it's one thing to talk about the mechanics, but I guess the question is that something that you see going forward that other employees, now that it's out in the open, are going to be asking for? I mean, I would rather see the town go, as I said last year and the year before, going to a defined contribution versus a defined benefit. So I like the idea of going to a 401k, but I have a hard time going with both at the same time.
Mm-hmm. There was a question there, Skip?
Yeah. I mean, did the selectmen approve this 3-0-2-1?
Scott, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe on this particular issue, we voted 3-0. On Scott's contract only is what we're talking about.
Right, because he's the only one in the town that gets a double retirement benefit.
Yep. Scott, did you want to address that at all?
Well, we talked about it during the subcommittee, but I wanted to get the selectmen's input on this.
Yep.
I guess where I was on the subcommittee is, I looked at it as a negotiation that took place between the town and Scott, and they ended up, you know, no pay raise and
For 2 years in a row.
for 2 years in a row, and
this is
you know,
only a
so-
matching grant, I'm sorry, a matching contribution if Mr. Dunn contributes to his retirement.
So I looked at that and sort of said, well, yeah, we could argue with it, but it's one guy. So it didn't bother me as much as it may have bothered others on the subcommittee.
Well, you know, my stance has always been if an individual can get something put into a contract, more power to them for being a good negotiator. But I'm just curious from the town side what the reasoning was, so that's why I decided to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a maximum amount that?
5% is a
5%.
maximum.
Okay.
And that's only if he contributes up to 5%.
So if he puts in 5%, then match.
And this item was not in Scott's previous contract, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, with the position that the selectmen took, which was pretty much across the board, and I'm not talking specifically with this subject, all the department heads are essentially frozen, or there was no raises offered, did he?
Not essentially, they are frozen.
Okay, so in this one case, we do have a pay raise if Scott opts to put money into that plan.
Yep. The department managers also contribute to their retirement, right, Scott? Or through the town, I should say, right? Yep.
think my position, I mean, this one instance doesn't bother me at all. Scott negotiated a decent contract, he didn't get a raise, I think it's, but I'm just worried about setting a precedence for the future. You know, as far as other department heads and whatnot.
Well, I can tell you that Mr. Dunn, as far as I know, is the only town employee with a contract.
We're 100% now.
Okay, the next tab we'll go through, and then, like I said, we can, there's boards and commissions. We can talk about these totally at the end if we want. You'll see that small number there, $900 versus $800, and the budget committee was the one that was up, and that's because we have a different process for taking notes and so forth. Seems somewhat logical in our discussion. Next is finance and appraisals. And in this particular department, there's 3 full-time and 2 part-timers, I recall. If you go down through here, this also includes technology, and we talked about that at the same time. I guess in general, our reaction was that you know, there's clearly some challenges in here in order to keep this as level as it is. Like, for example, in the technology area near the back, you know, Jeff has cut down on software and electronic material and so forth, and he's bought hardware on the next page and kept the thing level. So I think that sort of goes across the board here, that trying to keep it flat, he's going to have a challenge to do that.
Mr. Chairman, I think Jeff cut out a lot of technology.
I don't have any technology
Well,
either.
I said it was included in this part.
Oh, which part?
Page 14.
Page 14.
Oh.
It's in this section, that's why.
All right, thanks.
Yeah,
Great job, Jeff.
That's really going to the cloud.
It's a negative, it's a negative, but
It's really starts on page 13 and continues on
Cloud,
14.
virtual,
Virtual.
yeah.
All right.
see, I'm glad Skip was there.
So you see the middle of page 13 is where operating in technology. It's under
And then page 13.
finance and appraisals, a red tab, and so the first part of finance and appraisals is truly finance and appraisals, and the second part is technology. We talked about them all together. You know, for example, if you look in here under technology or under appraisals, you'll see that the appraisal services is flat at $120,000. And our general discussion was we think the town does all right in its appraisal situation. It'd be hard to match that if you had your own people, and you'd have more people and all the headaches that associate with that. So in general, we didn't have a problem with this budget. And you see that in the summary that I gave you to start with.
This is another example of, like last year, what we did was, this board remembers, we actually reduced what Cochran and Associates had requested, what was gonna be the bill, and we basically told them what we were gonna pay. And again, Will Cochran was gracious enough to accept that, and this year we're doing exactly the same thing.
The big advantage we all agree with having that kind of a situation is when you need a big effort done, he'll bring in 6 people or maybe more. And if he doesn't, he has nobody here. So, I mean, it's really tailored to whatever is needed, much like we could do in fire and police on a county basis.
This is another one of those issues where people have the philosophical thinking of, can we privatize local government? This is an issue where we can.
Right.
Have the selectmen thought about doing it in other areas?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure it'll come out in some of the different departments, but we've actually looked at how we could do it for DPW, how could we do that for DPW. One of the things that had come up this year, which we're gonna pursue for next year, is some of our cemetery and/or landscaping, I think. Scott, we talked about actually using prisoners, work release, to actually do that. We, of course, have to work all of the details out, from transportation, security, who would be doing it, who would supervise them. But I think it gives us, the town, another opportunity to look at how can we save money. And I think that would be a great opportunity to be able to have those services provided at a much reduced cost.
It would be great if they would plow up the fields up at the state school and have a giant garden so that they could use it in their own kitchens up there in the county complex. They used to do that.
Now the DOT in Gilford, they use crews.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, the District 3 DOT office here, I know they have used the correctional facility work crews as well, so they have good experience with that, and they just said they work hard and do a very good job, and I don't know the details.
A typical one you always hear talking about is dispatch services. Does that discussion ever come up? Where's your police dispatch, your fire dispatch?
That's come up
Times.
many times. And that's something that obviously we have pursued as it's been made public. And we feel that Gilford has paid into the system that we're unable to participate in. So we're continuing to look at that.
Yeah.
But I know another thing, some of the landscaping is currently outsourced, correct, Scott? And some of the cleaning that's being done at the library is also privatized. It's not done by a town employee.
Yeah, makes sense.
Could I ask, flaggers, I noticed that you're using laborers and truck drivers for flaggers when outsourced flaggers are much cheaper. I mean, we're talking $12 an hour versus 16, and I mean, I'd rather see our town employees doing something more productive than standing at the end of the road during road construction.
It'll be a
directing
great
traffic.
question or comment to talk to Sheldon when
Yeah.
he does his section of it.
about that. That's a problem I have too.
It's a great comment. You can talk to Sheldon, the board obviously can talk to Sheldon when he comes before us.
Flaggers are relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, the worst job in the world. Okay, next is legal. Find a tab with legal, which is down around the curve, I believe.
Green one.
Yep.
I can't find the damn
It
thing.
was right after.
It's right after.
Oh, I have it open already. I found it ahead of time. The selectmen just took a challenge of a small reduction there. Now, we don't have Liberty Hill with the same effort this coming year probably, but it's somewhat unknown also.
Right, that's the issue that we looked at with our legal fund specifically towards Liberty Hill. The fact is that we still have not heard from DES of where that is finally going to come out at. And the issue could be that even if they ruled in our favor of 100% removal, which is what I've been fighting for 4 years, as well as the other selectmen for the last few years since they came on board. The issue, of course, being is even if they ruled in our favor, National Grid, in my personal opinion, will appeal that, and that's going to cost the town money to try to enforce that 100% approval, if in fact that's what DES says. And then on the flip side, if DES says, no, we're going to leave 20% in there or whatever, we still need legal funds to pursue challenging that to get 100% removal. So unfortunately, it was one of those issues that we had to leave that money in there. It's a shame that we do have to do that, because it'd be great if they could have just made their decision in this fiscal year, and we would know where we stand, so we could reduce that. But unfortunately, it's an unfortunate thing that we had to raise additional funds for that.
Lawyers get you every time.
As long as my daughter's cashing the check.
Were we discussing this at this
Yeah.
point? The 2,000 on unfunded mandates, what does that entail?
Scott, did you want to address specifically on that one, on litigation?
That's money that we're actually contributing to a lawsuit against the state on its decision to withhold its portion of the retirement funds.
As part of a group of towns. Sounds like good money invested to me.
It's going to take a Supreme Court decision ultimately.
Right.
So this is a lawsuit to force the state to pay all of the retirement portion that they have.
Well, it's a lawsuit under Section 28A of the state constitution, which says prohibits the state from enacting unfunded mandates. So the position of several communities through the municipal association is, when the state decided that it was going to no longer fulfill its promise, what it had been paying for 35% of the retirement funds for teachers, police and fire, towns got together and said, you have to pay that, we're required to be in the retirement system, this would be an unfunded mandate, so that's what that lawsuit's all about.
I mean, this is a perfect example, Dick, of what I was talking about with unfunded mandates earlier. I happen to think that if we're going to employ the folks that we do, we should be on the hook for the retirement, because having the state pay those funds basically buries or hides that actual cost. And it's probably better to have a truer cost because we have to pay it, but then it goes back to what we talked about in the subcommittee, which is, and I mentioned earlier, was to go to a defined contribution versus a defined benefit. And if that goes through, do you think that would spur the court to push in that direction, or just no clue?
Well, I think that is a separate issue entirely, whether the state as a whole moves in that direction in lieu of the state retirement system. That's a big legislative issue. This is a direct challenge to the legislatures pulling the rug out from under the town's feet.
Yeah. The other one is really more of an issue of the approach they take, which is like moving a ship that's coming into dock and finding there's something in the way. The next one's insurance.
Mr. Chair?
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, one more question, Mr. Chairman, on that. Union assistance, what does that entail?
Scott?
That's if we need some legal advice related to a specific personnel matter. We have a firm, we don't have one retainer, but there is a firm that we use to, when we need to get some.
And there's union contracts being negotiated.
Either unions or it could be a non-union employee. If we're in the unfortunate position of having to discharge someone involuntarily, we like to make sure that we've got our I's dotted and T's crossed, and oftentimes we will talk to a lawyer about what we're doing.
Again, an unfortunate situation that we have to raise tax dollars for that, but we do.
And the next tab that we talked about was insurance.
Excuse me,
Yes, Dave, I see you there.
before we move on, under the 2011 expenditures, you had budgeted 68,000, and it's showing that you've spent 21. Is there a lot more between now and the end of the year that you're expecting, or are you expecting that to come way under budget from last year?
We pray and hope that number will stay as low as possible. Again, we funded it, and again, Scott jumped me in at any point, we funded it, of course, to fight that battle for Liberty Hill. We haven't, a lot of it was Liberty Hill. We haven't heard back from them for months. And so as a result, we didn't want to spend any taxpayers' dollars. We're waiting.
More what I was getting at is that if that doesn't get expended as part of that suit by the end of December, that's unexpended funds that comes back to the taxpayers, is that
In
correct?
the undesignated fund.
Yeah, designated fund, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Like any other line in here.
Yeah, unlike the school, there's an undesignated fund balance for the town that it automatically goes into, and every year the selectmen choose to spend some of that to help taxes.
Just a rookie question here. I mean, you couldn't roll that over into that same line item for
Unfortunately, with
future
the
use and
RSA,
legal.
right, Scott, that's where it comes from, that if you raise the money this year to spend, it has to be spent in this year. Unless it was a job that has begun in this year, is that how it is with
You can
Scott?
encumber the funds if there's a contract or a purchase orders.
Right.
But at this point, that's why you're budgeted what you're doing going forward, expecting that things will happen next year.
Unfortunately.
But in case of an overrun on the 2012 legal expenses, you could dip into that
Undesignated fund balance.
undesignated funds to cover the additional cost, correct?
No, you have to stay within your budget,
Yeah.
so you'd have to take it from somewhere
So
else.
undesignated funds just goes to reduce the tax rate.
Or something else, capital or something you could vote to spend it on.
Like a road washing or something, something serious.
Anything else on legal? I mean, the way we looked at legal, we talked about it some, a couple of the same questions were raised here, but in general, you're picking a number and hoping you stay there with a couple of uncertainties about it. On insurance, the insurance basically stayed flat, and the first two line items under the tab have the only story. Unemployment compensation went up because there have been a couple of claims, and workman's comp went down because they changed sources for the insurance, and it got a better rate. So turns out it worked to balance. Okay, the next tab is welfare. That's down over the hump. Welfare assistance.
Dick, did you guys audit every tax form that was in here?
No, we passed that fall.
I'm just checking.
We figured that outside agencies, we'd all do what we do we used to talk about them a lot, and now we try and avoid it, because the voter will have their say. On the welfare, again, this is going to be what it's going to be, as long as you have someone who is watching over it and seems to be doing a good job, and I think we do. I think the general feeling of the committee is, the number has gone up from 67.5 to 72,260. That's a pretty low number considering the times we're in. And my view would be, gut feel, this is an area that could find an overrun. Because people who have been hanging on and hanging on, one of these days aren't going to hang on any longer, and you never know when that time comes. So what are you gonna do other than say it looks pretty impressive to us as a subcommittee? Excuse me.
Dick, there's a new agency in there this year. Did you guys discuss them at all?
No. We didn't talk outside agencies at all.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify again, on all these outside agencies, this is not part of our budget. We're not at all.
We will have to talk about them though.
Right, when and if those outside agencies come with a petition warrant article, but they are not part of our budget.
Let me ask a different question. This other agency, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, they requested to be on here, is that correct? Within the town? I mean, within our review?
Scott, that's part of what
I'm
the
just curious how that originated.
Yeah, we did
Part of the
not
police.
solicit them, if that's what you're asking. Yes.
Now, it's still gonna work the same way, though. They have to put a petition warrant article on the ballot. And if they do, we as a committee will have to make a recommendation on that warrant article. And the selectmen will also. And it's an area I'd just as soon, as we have mentioned for years, just as soon not make a recommendation on.
But we have to.
Right.
I think that is a good point. How did they actually get $500 on this 2012 department request if they were not in here before? You know, how? If you didn't
They
solicit?
sent in a letter. That's all they did, send in.
It's good avenue, I'll do that.
Oh, it doesn't give them the money.
No, but I mean, are you able to use discretion and say,
Unless they, if it's not in the selectmen's budget, and it's not in the budget committee's budget, then the only way they could actually get money is to do a petition warrant article and have the voters approve the funding. Otherwise, the fact that it's there means nothing.
Could I ask a different question then? As I read what was in here, and specifically saying court-appointed special advocates, it sounds like it's dealing with children, and I would guess kids from Gilford. You know, does anybody know any? I'm just trying to get a little background on it because I've never heard of this group before.
Well, we have,
This agency.
this subcommittee did not do anything with that
Okay.
package.
That-
So we're in no position to answer. You're welcome to ask.
No, that's where what I'm trying to get at. Maybe I need to do some independent homework, that's all.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking if anybody knew anything.
Well,
Yeah,
I
they're
think-
volunteers that offer themselves to the court. They act as advocates on a child's behalf during proceedings. Sometimes there are no parents, sometimes there are parents, but they might need some help. The CASA folks oftentimes know the system and can say different things that could help or remind during the proceedings. It's not quite a guardian ad litem type of deal, just a volunteer, but there's places where they have done some good work,
Just
as they
trying
all seem to
understand.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there can be some examples where those things were really great to have. I think what we'll have to do is, when we get near the end and we see what comes in, we have a bunch of data here that we can then peruse and see what we think of that particular warrant article. My personal approach is I'm not going to peruse it until I see what I'm going to have to.
Croc TV.